Good morning, everyone. Most people here probably know who I am, but for those who don't, my name's Tim, and I'm a reader or lay minister here at St Mary's, the same as Carol. What a lot of you might not know is that I'm also an alcoholic. 10 years ago, I had got to the point of drinking a litre of gin a day. Some of you might think it's impossible to drink a litre of gin a day. I can tell you that it's not. Some people drink a whole lot more. I used to drink anything else I could lay my hands on, and I used to take a concoction of painkillers to knock myself out. And I nearly died as a result. I happened to pass out one morning. My wife phoned a rehab, having prayed to God for help because she didn't know where else to turn. She prayed to God for help, and she managed to get me into a rehab for 4 weeks. And in that rehab, I was introduced to the 12-step program of AA. And the 12-step program of AA was written back in 1939 in America. It has spread to nearly every country in the world, and it's a known, proven way of actually recovering from alcohol and drug addiction. Early in my first year of sobriety, I had the opportunity to visit a prison in Blackpool, and once I'd been into that prison, it completely changed my life. I felt that God was calling me to do something in prison. So I started working at Winchester Prison as a prison visitor, progressed into chaplaincy, where I took the 12-step program to people who were suffering from drugs and alcohol. And it was in Winchester that I first came across Stuart. What some of you may not know is that here on a Thursday we do have an AA group that runs in the tea room for recovery for alcohol and drug addiction. And at St Mary's we are a registered church who welcome ex-offenders to join our services, and we offer them support. So when people leave prison in this area, if they want a church to come to, this is a church at which they are welcome. So I continue to work with ex-offenders, alcoholics and addicts while I'm here. So this last week I celebrated my 10th year of sobriety. This morning, Stuart has brought his girlfriend Amy with him. If Amy would like to stand up. Amy is actually celebrating 3 years clean today. So I'm going to finish there because it's not about me this morning, it's about Stuart and his amazing testimony. So I'm going to hand over to Stuart. Thank you.
Cheers, Tim. Morning, everyone. Wow. I thought it was bad enough with the 3 songs that I got really emotional about and then all this, so I've got to try and do something with this. But yeah, thanks for your lovely welcome here. What an amazing church this is, it really is. So you know how I met Tim. I'll go back a bit further about what my life was like and sort of how I sort of came to be in Winchester Prison to meet Tim. The first sort of big event that happened in my life, I was too young to know about it. I was a baby, and my mum left me. I saw her sporadically throughout my life, but I didn't know what an impact that sort of had on me at the time. But you know, I would have never have known then how much she loved me, I would have been used to her smell, I would have been used to the tone of her voice, and I must have woke up one morning and it was all gone. My dad sort of was dealing with his wife walking out on him at the time, and he threw himself into his work and sort of pursued sort of social life. I think he wanted to remarry, and he remarried really quickly. I was sort of passed around to neighbours, and lots of different smells and lots of different voices, and I should imagine, I don't remember obviously, but it must have been quite traumatic really for a baby. I came to know how much that affected me later on in my life. My dad did remarry. He remarried very quickly. My stepmum was a very, very volatile woman. She had a lot of problems of her own that I didn't know about at the time, but she really did sort of take out what was going on in her life. She took out on me, and I had a really hard time up until about the age of 9. And for all those years, I was just, my whole day was took up of trying to find ways to make this woman love me. And I just couldn't, but it had become my life. And I woke up one morning and it was gone, you know, she'd gone. And I thought I'd feel really relieved, and I thought, you know, this could be the dawn of something new. But, you know, any attention, however negative, was attention, you know, and I'd never really been held at that point in my life. I'd never been told that I was loved, or, you know, my dad's a lovely man, but he's very, very sort of cold, right? He can't show emotion. So, yeah, I had quite an empty childhood. I know people have had a lot worse, but that was mine, you know. So when my stepmum left, I became what's known as a latchkey kid. And basically, my dad put a front door key in my hand with absolutely no direction, and I had to sort of fend for myself quite a lot of the time. I really did become very feral then. I became really angry with my circumstances. I just couldn't sit still. I became very disruptive. It was a period of my life when there were social workers involved and a lot of coming and going. And I do remember, you know, now I was forming memories at this point, and I've carried them throughout my life. And I remember just feeling, what have you got to do to sort of just be loved, you know, in this world? And what I decided to do about it was just take what I could from the world. You know, the world's a very sort of attractive place. There's a lot of things that can make you happy on paper. And I pursued them all, you know, and I started hanging around with a group of older teenagers that were having a similar life as me. And these were my peers, you know, and I finally felt I was part of something, and it had been my ambition was just to feel accepted. And I was accepted into this sort of gang of feral teenagers, and we were having a whale of a time, really. You know, people that are feeling hurt, people that are feeling angry tend to sort of, you know, give that out to other people, and that was the kind of person I was. I was very, very disruptive. Life was very, very chaotic from an early age. I was doing things that, I was going to school, and, you know, my friends who were having stable lifestyles, you know, I just became really angry about their stable lifestyles. I became a sort of bit of a bully, really. I just sort of like wanted to take everything out on everything around me, basically. This kind of lifestyle led me into alcohol and drugs. I remember the first time I drank alcohol, and all that loneliness, all that isolation that I felt, all that lack of acceptance, I felt warm inside, I felt wanted, I felt that I had a hope, you know, I felt that I could build a future for myself. This is what alcohol made me feel like instantly. And, you know, that feeling, I couldn't get it from anything else. There was nothing real in this world for me that I could ever feel like that. And I became an alcoholic, and drugs came into my story throughout my early teens. Around, you know, while I was doing this, I saw people having normal lives. I saw my friends getting married, and I saw people going to the football and doing all these nice things. And I tried to be like that. I sort of tried to have relationships. I had children, and I couldn't handle absolutely any of it. Without alcohol, I couldn't do a thing. My children had a terrible time, really, with me. I loved them dearly. You know, I remember when I was deep in alcoholism, and I was very secretive about it. I didn't know anything about AA. I didn't know anything about recovery, and I didn't really know anything about Jesus. So I had to find my own solutions. And I remember my eldest daughter, when she was born, I was at the hospital, and I cut her umbilical cord, and I sat there. I was the first person to hold her. I watched her taking her first breaths, and I was absolutely convinced that I would never drink again. I didn't realise that alcoholism is a very, very serious progressive illness. And I thought, this is it, you know, I can love this person like I wanted to be loved, and this is the answer. And I felt absolutely sure in that moment that my pain was over. I walked out of that hospital. Her mum had to stay in for a while, and so did the baby. So I went home on my own, and I didn't even make it home before I went and bought alcohol, and I sat out on my own and got drunk. And that's when I knew that I had a very serious problem. Again, I had no understanding of the illness and didn't know there was a solution. My life went on like that for a number of years. There was a constant sort of round of hospitals, institutions, prisons, police cells, absolute chaos. And that resilience that I'd had from a child, that sort of will to survive, and sort of a will to make myself feel happy. There was a lot of adventure in it, which sort of it created the illusion that it wasn't too bad a life, really, but it was absolutely dreadful when I look back on it now. And it was a vortex, and a lot of people got sucked into it, and a lot of people got hurt, which was never my intention. But that is the nature of the illness that we suffer from, So on we went. Now, I became very seriously, at the end of my addictions, and there was a lot of drugs as well, I became very seriously street homeless. For a long periods of time, I'd have little sort of spells where I'd get an emergency bed and lots of spells in hospital. But I literally spent sort of 5 years sleeping out on the pavement. And in that period of my life, that's where I wanted to be. I didn't want hope. I had this sort of feeling that it was the hope that was going to kill me. If I could convince myself that this is all I've got, I can make a go of this. And I was quite productive on the streets, which is why I was out there for so long. I saw so much pain, and the streets they're such a volatile place to live, obviously, I'd see like moments of sheer kindness and charity, and then 2 seconds later I'd see absolute horrors, situations of people getting seriously hurt. That kind of lifestyle can't go on for long. Mine went on for longer than most because I'm a very resilient person. But yeah, so I ended up getting a prison sentence. I got 3 years and I was sent to Winchester Prison. When I turned up at Winchester Prison, I was just over 9.5 stone. I was absolutely broken. There's no two ways about it. I hadn't washed for months. I was in the same clothes I'd had on for a very long time. I dread to think how long. I had to literally peel the socks off my feet to get into the prison, in the reception. It was, yeah. And the thing is, in my head, I still thought I can get drugs in prison. I've been to prison before. I know what I'm doing. I'll just get through this. And that's how I intended to do it. We were in COVID lockdown as well, so it was, I was in prison, if you see what I mean. It was terrible, really. And I think that's what saved my life. I mean, I'll have to go back a bit here, but when I was homeless, one day a woman came up to me, and this was quite common. Can I pray for you? And I'm like, yeah, go on then, And this woman put her hand on my shoulder, and she said a prayer. I can't remember the prayer, but I've never forgot this woman's face. What I didn't realise at this time was that God had heard this prayer, and, I know we have to accept him ourselves, we have to accept him with our whole heart, but he started keeping an eye out for me, I'm sure of it. And with hindsight, I can see that I was getting pulled along from this moment, despite myself. So the first thing that happened was I died. I got up one morning in the doorway that I was sleeping in. I walked into a well-known shopping centre in Southampton to use the toilets, and I overdosed. I came out of the toilets and I was trying to make it back out of the entrance to the shopping centre, and I dropped dead. It was very early in the morning and there weren't a lot of people about, but there was 2 people in there that I literally fell at their feet, and they were off-duty paramedics, and they saved my life. I didn't know anything about this. I got into hospital and I woke up the next morning, or it might have been 2 days later, and a nurse that had admitted me and dealt with me the night that I came in, she came in when she wasn't working to see me, and she said, do you know what happened? Do you know what's happened to you? And she was very obviously a Christian, not that I knew it then. And I said, no, I haven't got a clue. I don't even know why I'm here. And she told me, and she said, something is going on for you. You know, there was only 4 people in, there was 2 of them were security guards. There was 2 off-duty paramedics in that shopping centre and you're still with us. Something's going on for you. Please just try and look after yourself. And I went back to my life as soon as I got out of there. But I just sort of, it's what that woman said to me, I thought, what if Jesus does love me? What if these people are right? It can't be true, surely, but what if it is? What do I have to do about it? And I didn't have a clue. Like I say, I ended up in prison and I was in lockdown, and this stuff that had happened to me just at the end of, before I went to prison, it was really playing on my mind. God was really working in my thoughts. And so I put an application. You've got to put an application into prison if you want to do absolutely anything. So I put an application in and I asked for a Bible, and I just sat in my cell and I was reading this Bible. And I could see that, what a man that Jesus was. If he was a man, what was he? I didn't know. But I thought, wow, I really relate to him, the places he went and the things that he did. And I started It didn't last. I sort of threw the Bible in the corner and tried to get through my sentence. But that app, basically what happened was, when we came out of lockdown, Tim went round the prison. He was every app that got put in through lockdown, and it must have been sort of a pile like that. He went round to visit all the people that had put these apps in. And Tim turned up at my door, and I was very intoxicated. I didn't quite know what was going on. And Tim said, "Oh, you asked to see the chaplaincy?" I said, "No, I never." He said, "Yeah, you put an app in. How are you getting on with your Bible?" And I'm like, "Oh." Yeah, and that little moment there, so we got talking. And Tim told me he was an alcoholic, and I was like absolutely stunned, a prison chaplain, and I couldn't believe it. And he said, "Well, would you like me to take you through the 12 steps?" And I said, "Yeah, I'd love that." And Tim came in every Saturday in his own time, and he came to see me, and he took me through the 12 steps. And the second and third steps of the 12 steps is come to believe in a power greater than yourself can restore you to sanity. And the third step is, had to become willing to hand your will and your life over to the care of God as you understand him. And I didn't understand him. So I said, "Tim, I want to know Jesus." And we got down on our knees in a grotty little room in prison. There was no windows. It was a disused library. We had dusty boxes all around us. And I got on my knees and I told Jesus that I am so sorry for how I lived my life. I told him that I believe him. I believe that he died for me. I believe that he rose on the 3rd day, and I believe that he is alive now and he wants to know me. And my life has basically never been the same since. Straight away, I went, the next few days, I wanted to see unicorns and rainbows, obviously. I wanted something, dramatic to happen, but nothing really did, not really. But all of a sudden, I felt that everything was going to be all right, and I had never felt like everything was going to be all right ever in my life. And I started accepting where I was. Acceptance, I started gaining this sort of weird feeling of acceptance. And I started sort of looking around me and seeing what other people's problems and the stuff that was going on for other people, and I'd never even noticed anything like that. And I was sat in a very bleak, dark place, and I felt so hopeful about my future. This carried on. Tim, we finished the 12 steps, and God bless Tim, he carried on coming in to see me, and we started studying the Bible together, and I started really learning what Jesus wants me to do with my life and sort of, what's required of me. And I sort of realised this is not a take relationship, He wants me to help him, and I felt a real love for Jesus. I read the Gospel of John, and I could see what a lonely man he was. I saw him wandering off in the mornings to talk to his father, and I thought, wow, what was he going through? And I could relate to him so much, and the way that he loved me and the people that he loved. And yeah, I thought it was absolutely amazing. But my life wasn't changing too much, sort of aesthetically, because I was in prison. But I started making good decisions, and I ended up being released from there and going to a Christian rehab. And it's an amazing place, Yeldall Manor. And I went for 6 months to a Christian rehab, and I spent that whole time doing Bible studies, fellowship, exploring faith, and it was absolutely amazing. There was talk at the time for me to stay at Yeldall Manor, and they were saying, if you carry on doing what you're doing, you can become staff, and I started mapping out a little life for me. But my plan, I've realised, is nothing like God's plan. And I was praying one night, and I just felt that he was telling me, you've got to go back to Southampton. And I expect you can all relate to this, but that filled me with dread, going back to Southampton. Yeah, I didn't want to come back to my home. So much had happened there. I didn't see the need to. Yeah, and I just knew he was saying, you've got to go back there. And I didn't have a clue why he wanted me to go back there. But I'm really lucky, really, since day one, that I've understood obedience, and I've just sort of thought, and I understand blind faith, I understand about not knowing what's going on and just walking towards it. So that's what I did. And everyone was absolutely stunned, because my sort of journey had been mapped out for me at Yeldal. And yeah, there was one guy that got it. There was a guy called Tony that used to disciple me, and he said, if that's what you think's going on, you need to go with that. And so I came back to Southampton, and I didn't have a clue why I'd done it. It became very clear very, very quickly. I was walking through the city centre one day. I'd only been back a couple of weeks. And the doorway that I slept in for 2 years, it was the doorway that I got up out of that morning that I died. And I just saw it, and the whole world stopped. That little sort of, asking God for something special to see, I want to really feel it. It happened. All the colours around me changed. There was hundreds of people walking past me, and I could hear their individual conversations. And I must have looked an absolute lunatic, just stood there grinning for I don't know how long. And I just felt that God was telling me that part of your life is over. Thank you for listening to me. Well done for doing what I asked you to do. Now I've got some serious work for you. And I walked down the road, and I bumped into two of the street pastors that used to help me when I was homeless. And I said, hello, and they didn't recognise me. And I said, it's me, Stuart. And like, what? And we just stood in the street, prayed. It was absolutely pouring with rain, and people were trying to push past us with shopping trolleys. It was, it was an amazing experience. And I became a street pastor. From that moment, I just looked in that doorway, and I felt the presence of God. And like I say, it was not of this world. I've never felt anything like it in my life. And I remember Tim telling me about when he was walking down the high street in Portsmouth, and the colours and what he felt, and he knew the truth. He knew it was real, and that's exactly what happened to me. And yeah, but I'm now sort of embedded. I've found a lovely church just like this one, and I do a lot of service. I've become a street pastor. I was out last night street pastoring, and yeah, we live in a broken world, but I've got understanding of what's going on around me. And some of the people that I'm helping, I was homeless with them, so they can see the truth. It's like it speaks for itself. I don't even have to open my mouth, and it's wonderful. And restored relationships. I'm starting to sort of with my children, I'm finding it difficult. Jesus has took away my shame, but it's easy for me to take it back sometimes. It's a deal that we have to keep doing. I do feel ashamed of myself. I feel terrible for how I hurt my children. So I'm doing the best I can, and my relationship with my father's got better. As you know, it's a massive weekend for Amy with her third sober birthday. And I went to visit Yeldal Manor yesterday. They have a big open day, and we went back to Yeldal Manor, and my dad came with me, and we had a wonderful day. And I heard about 5 of these testimonies that you're hearing now of people whose lives were so broken by drinking drugs and what they're doing with them now. It was an amazing day. And when I was at Yeldal Manor, I picked up a book called Mum, Can You Lend Me 20 Quid? And it's a book by a woman who had twin boys, and they both sunk into heroin addiction. One of them ended up killing himself, and the other twin's still alive, but she wrote a book about it. And I read it in Yeldal Manor, and it changed my life. It's sort of like, when we come out of addiction, we are told to think of ourselves. It's about what's going on for us, and we don't really sort of think about the people around us, the stuff we've done to other people. And this book was a mum's, account of what happens to the people, to the parents, and our loved ones when we get lost in addiction. And we're walking along, and there she is, the woman who wrote the book. She's got a little stall there, and and I walked up and I said, I read your book when I was in here. And she said, oh wow. She said, how long have you been free? And I said, I'm just coming up to 3 years, and it was beautiful. But when I read that book, it made me so emotional about my dad, about what he went through, because this woman was telling my dad's story about what I'd done to him, and my dad was stood next to me. And I introduced this woman to my dad and said, this is my dad, can you lend me 20 quid? And it's funny, isn't it? We ask God for words sometimes and all that, and he gave me words yesterday. I didn't even have to open my mouth. He just created that situation with my dad. When I was reading that book in Yeldall Manor, the way I was feeling about my dad, but I couldn't tell him. I just didn't know how to tell him how I felt. And then this woman did it for me yesterday. I better stop there, I think. So that takes me up to today. But yeah, I mean, new relationships. I've got Amy's parents there, and they're wonderful people. That acceptance I've always been looking for was given to me by Jesus, and now I accept everything around me, and it becomes easier for people to accept me. And I had my first family Christmas dinner for a very long time at Amy's parents' house, and we had a lovely day. And there's some irony there, because Rex spent his whole working life chasing around people like me and trying to put me in handcuffs. And we're sat sharing our Christmas dinner together, and I'm glad I'm getting too old now to be chased, and Rex is too busy chasing balls down the fairway now, so we're over that. But yeah, I want to thank everyone for listening to me today, and thanks for the invite. I absolutely love coming here. It's a fabulous place. The worship you do here, and the love and the welcome, you've got this just right. God's very pleased with St. Mary's. I absolutely know it. Peace be with you all.